Check two. Check two. Hello. Hello, folks. Hello, friends. How are you doing? It's me, Rob. Hello. I'm back. Oh shit, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be nice if the sub goal was just filled the whole right away? That'd be nice. That'd be nice, but nope. Good old Sisyphus over here. Gotta roll that ball all the way back down the hill. That's how we do things here. That's how we do things in the content economy. We'll let that ball roll all the way back down the hill. You spent all the yesterday pushing it up. Spent all yesterday pushing it up, and then the next day, right back down to the very bottom. Hello, Danger Dave Ball. What is up? Hello, folks. Come one, come all. It's another beautiful day here in Montreal. 24 degrees and sunny. It was really like when I woke up this morning, it smelled like someone was burning a bonfire like outside my apartment. And it was very yellowish like in the morning, but I guess in the morning, like once the sun came up, I guess it blew away to somewhere else. It was very smoky this morning though. Seems fine now. Despite it being like a hot, sunny day, though, I do have a very spicy bowl of noodles that I'm going to eat. Look at Rob Rousseau. Look at his wise eyes, his healthy visage. I don't know if I'd describe it as healthy, but thank you, Diego. Flattery will get you everywhere, sir. The glasses provided by fellow socialists. That's right, the Christopher Clues Eyewear Company. A tasteful mustache, his Lenin bust. Truly, this is the Homo Sovieticus we envisioned. I'll take that. I will take that, I'll tell you that much. Oh, Vlad, thank you so much. I didn't even notice before I even sat down. Vlad the Victor. Off work early, can watch the entire TRRS episode and celebrated with a extremely generous 1,200 friend coin. To start the day. Vlad, thank you for that. It's very kind of you. What a wonderful start to the stream. Here's my bowl of extremely spicy noodles that I just made for lunch. They're like a spicy, cheesy ramen with some bok choy in there and some fresh mozzarella in there. And some, of course, peanut Laogan Ma on top. The fresh mozzarella is going to be nice there. It's going to be all melted now in there. I'm eating good every day. I mean, it's part of the stream. It's part of the reason people tune in. You know, don't ask me why. Like, look at the pull. See, there's like a cheese pull. I have been eating some very good lunches. I really have. It's been a journey this year, the noodle journey. I've really, over the last few months, upped my game. I'm capable of pulling out some very tasty noodle dishes at any time. I got really improved. Yeah, I always liked bok choy in my like Chinese food, Diego, but I've really enjoyed over the last couple months getting it. It's very versatile. You can just throw it in soups, like in the water, It's really good to fry up in oil and spices and eat as a side or in a stir fry. Super healthy. I always pick up a package when I'm at the grocery store now. It's really flavorful. Like it absorbs all the flavor of whatever you're cooking with. And putting the fresh mozzarella in this is really like takes it to a whole different level. It's already like a cheesy, spicy ramen noodle. You throw a little bit of the fresh mozzarella in there, it gets all melty. Oh mama. Oh mama. My son was just saying it's the summer of TRRS. People are saying it, folks. People are saying it. They really are saying it. Over the last year, I've learned a lot of new cooking and baking techniques. I make my own salsa tortillas, pitas, French bread, cheddar and chive biscuits, butter-basted halibut now. That sounds very nice. I don't do a lot of like baking, like making bread or tortillas or pitas or things like that. I feel like I should though. How does that compare to my lunch? A big glass of milk and an entire sleeve of Oreos. Maybe half a bag of bourbon biscuits, depending on how much milk I have left. I envy, King, when you've got that metabolism where you can do that. Believe me, I would like nothing more. I love eating a sleeve of Oreos and drinking a big ice cold glass of milk. I think that sounds wonderful. But like, you fucking look at me already. I can't be doing that stuff. You know? I can't be having lunch a sleeve of Oreos for lunch. I just can't do it. I totally approve of it, though. I think that's a very delicious thing to eat. I'll tell you that much. I know it's anecdotal as shit, but even my lib mother was watching the local news this morning. Like, why are they calling this billionaire an explorer? It was a vanity trip. For sure, it's like it's already been explored. It's good that people are picking up on that. People are struggling enough in their own lives. They're like, why do we care about these like objectively silly people who got into this like death trap contraption willingly? I had that until I turned 37 and instantly gained 10 pounds barreling downhill. I know. I mean, my weight has been a struggle with me, for my whole adult life. That's just how I'm built. It's just how I'm built. I'm a big boy. That's it. I've just kind of accepted that. And there are obviously things you can do to control that, but I also happen to enjoy eating delicious food. I also happen to enjoy doing that, and I don't feel this huge urge to just like stop doing that because my body doesn't look like a Adonis like 20-year-old like how I used to look. When I had abs and I was very athletic. I kind of enjoy eating delicious food, even though I can't be eating like sleeves of Oreos and stuff like that. Ideally, you got to find some kind of balance, because if you let your health get too out of control, then you can have all kinds of health consequences, which I don't want, which I already have some of a little bit. So I do need to like tone it down a little bit, I will admit. But I do try to not overthink it too much or like feel too bad about myself. Rob can have a sleeve of Oreos sometimes as a treat. It's been a while since I've had a sleeve of Oreos. I really do enjoy dunking them in the milk and letting them soak up all the milk. And then you eat a few of those and then you have a sip of the ice cold milk with the Oreo pieces in it. Delicious. I want to go to the store right now to purchase a carton of Oreos to do exactly that. But I'll just eat my noodles, which are not exactly super healthy in and of itself, but got a vegetable in there. The bok choy is good for you. That's very good. Really do recommend if you can find if you live near like a grocery that has the imported ramen section, or if you live like near an Asian grocery, really recommend checking out that spicy cheese buldak ramen from Korea. It's really, really good. Chin Chin washing it down with an ice cold DC. That's just a great combination. That is just a fantastic combination. I think one of the main reasons I would like to be skinnier is that I could eat things like that just more guilt-free. I'm a big pie fan. But I never get it because I'm just like, I'm at the grocery store and it's like, I should not get this pie right now. It's just not a good idea. So I don't. I would really like to sometime just like not eat a pie, just not feel weird about it. I'd just be like, delicious. I'm having a delicious pie and coffee for breakfast or whatever, you know? I mean, I guess sometimes for breakfast I do eat like Danishes or donuts or things like that, which probably is the exact same caloric content of pie. What am I so afraid of? You know? I should just eat it. Fuck it. Who cares? Yeah, probably noodles are the same. Yeah. I guess the sugar makes a difference. There's the calories, but there's the sugar in the pie. I don't know. Fuck. I don't know. Fuck it, dude. Let's go bowling. I'm a 1950s businessman enjoying pie and coffee for breakfast, along with an unfiltered cigarette before a long day of selling lead-paste bait to schools. I'm going to start talking like that, too. Sorry, just finishing my noodles here. I'm just staining my face orange right in front of you. Oh, it's very good. Ugh. I never think
you
to
can count
grab
on
the
me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
napkin first.
Hi Rob, hope you're having a good day.
Thank you, oh sorry. Thank you for the Prime sub. 19 months of Prime from Oh Sorry. I am having a good day. I just had a pretty delicious lunch there. You know, good start to the stream. I hope you're having a good day too. Oh, that last sip of the broth, the spicy, cheesy broth with a couple little peanuts in there. Oh, this is very good. Who's Grog? Is that the baby who became the new Riz King? Man, that's so confusing and scary to me reading those kind of stories. I always be thinking about what maybe we're talking about in the 1700s, like how has that average conversation evolved over time? MFers crying because people are stealing their tweets, but you copy this one dude from 1400 said the same shit. That's why I think it's so hilarious that like ancient tablet that was transcribed where the guy's like complaining about it's become kind of a meme. He's complaining about this like copper salesman in like some kind of in this ancient like Mesopotamian early civilization, the early days of like writing on tablets and these early days, complaining about the grade of the copper. And it's so funny because it's so relatable. Nasir, that's right, fucking Nasir just screwing over everybody, selling shit tier copper. It's hilarious because it really sounds so like nothing at all has changed about the ways that we interact with one another. This fucking copper guy has me over a barrel. That's really funny. That's why the fuck him up Socrates tweet hits so hard. That's right, yeah. Yeah, James Cameron would never get stuck in a submarine by the Titanic. He's been to the Titanic over 30 times without incident because he followed proper procedures and worked with professionals. I guarantee you the submersible that James Cameron explored the Titanic with wasn't being done on a little fucking Logitech controller. Cuneiform hieroglyphs roughly translated to fucking Balthazar stole my headphones. Yeah, exactly. They're just like us, for real. I think we are watching James Cameron's The Abyss in the Discord server. When is that? Look at what are the upcoming events? August 2nd, The Abyss. That's going to be good. That's going to be really good. Another successful movie night last night as well. We watched Richard Linklater's adaptation of Philip K. Dick's Scanner Darkly last night in the Discord server. Very enjoyable. I did miss about the first 20 minutes of it. I was finishing up some podcast stuff, and I had to return a drill. And then I missed the first 20 minutes, and I forgot. I'm not gonna pretend that I didn't. Okay, I did forget. I forgot about the movie night. But the important thing is that I remembered, and that 20 minutes in, I was able to watch the majority of the film. Philip Patriots, let me talk to you. The party went really well this weekend. I hit 2 daggers in beer pong, and the cops were not called. Call that a W. Great job. Coal mine. Some people say it's the summer of love. I say it's the summer of Rob. Well, I think just the very fact that you and others in the chat have said both summer of Rob and summer of TRRS, I think that gives credence to the statement that people are saying it. Not me, of course. Not me. I'm just observing what others are saying. And many people are saying it's the summer of TRRS. You know, I don't want that. I don't know what that means. But people are saying it. And it would be not doing my basic task as a journalist to not report that people are saying that. Dave Legend made he made this amazing rotating TRRS globe, and I need to put that's my project that I have to do here. I've got to get the emotes updated on this page. I need to implement the glowing TRRS or the rotating 3D TRRS orb. Rob's got his 3-inch inseams on and ready to dive into the summer of TRRS. So, you look at that image that you just saw on the screen and tell yourself, ask yourself, is it the summer of TRRS? Is it the summer of Rob? I think if you look within yourself, you'll realize that you know the answer to that question. You've always known the answer to that question. It's the question which has brought you to me. Coal mine, Logan Paul's an annoying person. He's a really great fit for pro wrestling and WWE though, and he's shown a lot of natural ability at the sport. So, hate the guy, but he's very good at it. And there's space in wrestling for people that are easily hateable, which he is. He's easily hateable, and it has a lot of athletic ability and wrestling ability. So that's a good formula to be a success in that industry. I do think he should probably win a match at some point, though. I don't think I would enjoy him winning, but I mean, maybe that's getting worked. I'm hoping for LA Knight. TRRS could stand for the Rob Rousseau Summer. It could. Yeah, and I'm not saying that it does, but it could. Logan Paul should beat Roman Reigns. That would be something else. That would be something else. So plenty of good stuff for us to talk about today, folks. Ennis Freedom should have stuck with it. Dude averaged 0 minutes a game in the NBA and only lasted a night in the ring. Did he wrestle? Or did he fight somebody? I didn't even know that. I'm sure he only lost because of Chinese interference. Probably China was so threatened by Ennis Freedom's quest to promote human rights and democracy that they called in the fix. Oh yeah, Sean, Dominic is great. Dominic is just fucking great. People just hate him and it's fantastic. Ennis fought the specter of communism, tapped out immediately. Seriously, not that impressive. What did the CIA think they were going to do with that? I don't know. Did they really think people were going to be like, "Oh wow, thank you, sir"? That was one of those cases where I think actually yelling at someone online does something, Every single one of his posts about it were just people being like, "Fuck you," and posting the picture I made of him getting dunked on by President Xi. I gotta say, as someone that creates content on Twitch or Twitter or whatever, nothing makes me happier than when I see something that I made, some random shit post or shitty image that I made, getting used by someone else that I don't know. And I've seen that image of Ennis Freedom getting dunked on by President Xi a number of times now. And it always makes my day. No, I haven't seen that coal mine. I haven't been keeping that closely with it. I feel like whenever I see news about CM Punk returning somewhere, the next day there are 1,000 threads about whether or not he was correct to burn everything down around him immediately. Well, one of the things about Punk's latest iteration is that there's been this concerted effort to work the wrestling media and basically turn it into an arm of the storytelling. Like the whatever constitutes wrestling media online or whatever has just been like completely exposed as being totally fraudulent over the last 8 months. With all these reports, oh no, he's gone forever. No, there's never going to be any reconciliation. No, everyone hates him. Locker room cancer. Kind of taking the elite side, because obviously people in the elite, the Bucks and I think Jericho, and he's not in the elite, but there was a number of people that were like in the ear of Dave Meltzer and these like wrestling journalists who are just so excited to get a scoop from someone that they'll just like, they were basically just typing up press releases for the Young Bucks and like these people in AEW, and it's just been exposed as being totally fraudulent as he's then come back, and like now it seems like there's this kind of working relationship that's being established, you know. And that's what I like about Punk. Whether you love him or hate him, he brings that kind of interest to the product, and you never know what's real and what's not real. That's exactly why Punk is who he is, because he's able to blur those lines like no one else can in the industry. And where you don't know where what you're watching is something real or something predetermined, and that's the beauty of it. That's the magic of wrestling. That spot when you're not sure anymore where reality begins and where the kayfabe begins. MJF as well is very good at it as well, and you can tell he's learned from Punk. I was just curious, since I haven't been following it closely enough to know who's right. I mean, the main thing is that AEW brought in Punk as their new like big top A-list guy. Made a big splash, really contributed to like a lot of like online success and big ratings and pay-per-view buys, made a really big impact. But then this narrative started through the wrestling media about Punk like politicking or getting Colt Cabana fired from the company or being this kind of toxic presence. And I think he rightfully ended up getting pretty pissed off about that, about the fact that like there's these coworkers that he has who are like, for reasons unbeknownst to anyone, are waging this kind of whisper campaign against him and getting these gullible wrestling journalists to print whatever stories that they want and creating this narrative about him. And I think he rightfully was not happy about it. And then after the all-out pay-per-view in September, when he was hurt, he knew he was injured and he knew he was probably going to be out for some time. He'd torn his triceps. He had just won the title. And he was like, I'm going to sit down and really clear the air here and really like put all the cards on the table. And that's, again, whether you like Punk or you don't like him, that's what's entertaining about him. You want him to do that. That's fucking great. I loved that all-out promo. I thought it was fucking amazing. No, I don't agree, Jay. I mean, I don't always take his side, but I thought he had a very serious point about the fact that he was being undermined. He was being undermined by the executive producers of AEW, who have their little clique and their little like friend group that they started the company, and that weren't happy about this guy coming in and being like the top guy and kind of overshadowing what they were doing. And there's this like waging this whisper campaign to spread these stories about him in the wrestling journalism. And he was like, what the fuck? Why are you doing, like, stop doing this? And just because it's Punk, did so in the most entertaining and outrageous fashion that got lots of people talking and lots of people heated about it. That's what he brings to the table. I loved it. I don't know. And like, that's the thing with him. It's like, you don't have to love him. You know, it's like people hate him. I don't always agree with him. Sometimes sometimes as an asshole. and is super abrasive, but fucking it's very entertaining. There's the flip side of that, which Punk came into a company, thought he was hot shit. But he was hot shit, though. He made a huge impact. And people need to listen to him and got mad when veteran wrestlers didn't want his advice. Well, clearly he had butted heads with Hangman Adam Page? I always forget his name. I always get confused by his name. Who I really like. I really like him, though. Hanger. I enjoy his work a lot. But clearly Punk butted heads with him and used that moment to just completely fucking demolish him. But I think more than not being respected for being listened to or whatever, he was pissed off about being accused publicly and then in a promo that he didn't agree with, getting accused basically of getting a guy fired and being like, you're bad for workers' rights. You got this guy fired, and I guess he took offense to that. Which you kind of understand, as if you didn't have anything to do with it, and over Colt Cabana too. Who cares? Do people really get that upset that Colt Cabana is not on TV? Oh no, you're gonna alienate your biggest star in the company because of Colt Cabana, It's hard for me to side with Punk after fucking his best friend. That's the thing. I don't know. I don't want to speak to that situation. I guess there was bad blood over that situation, stretching back a couple years and a bunch of legal difficulties and fucked up shit. I don't know. I don't know who's to say who's right in that situation. I'd like to see him feud with MJF again, Coal Mine. We talking AEW, just a little brief AEW talk. Even though as you can see, I've been paying attention to certain things, I'm still a overall kind of a lapsed fan. It's I don't watch a ton of wrestling, but I do pay attention to what's going on, and I watch a lot of the promos, and I keep abreast of what's happening. Abreast. There's some fucking great matches coming up. And I like MJF doing the heel thing too, of getting offered a match with Tanahashi, who is a legend. Who's a fucking legend in the wrestling industry. One of the absolute best to ever do it. And MJF just treating him, he's some indie nobody. I think it's making me mad, and I know that he's a heel, and I understand what kayfabe is, and I get all this stuff, and it's pissing me off. It's okay, that's enough. Show some fucking respect. Show some respect to Tanahashi. He's the ace, and MJF is just acting like he's this nobody. You can feel it working. You can feel it working you. I am being a mark. It's true. I'm getting worked. And I love it. That's my favorite. That's what I enjoy about it, though. That's what I enjoy about the sport. That's the good stuff. Working yourself into a shoot, brother. Don't I know it? Don't I know it, folks? I love it, though. I love it. I was thinking of... Because, I got started doing freelance writing being a wrestling journalist. Some of you may not know this. Alt Tab Dad, if you're just learning that I'm a wrestling guy, you might not know this. But when I started, freelance writing and getting my name in, Vice and some other publications, I was talking about pro wrestling. And one of the first things that I did for Vice was I spent a week hanging out at the Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo with this guy named Drew Onyx, who's a wrestler and rapper and promoter in Montreal, who has this wrestling school, the Torture Chamber pro wrestling dojo. So I spent a week hanging out there and did this feature for Vice Sports where I talked about some of the people that were there and some of what the wrestling training was like. It was really cool. I was thinking about contacting Drew Onyx or maybe anyone running a show in this area to see if I can get into commentary. You know, if I could start doing commentary, if I could be a heel commentator, I think that would be one of my dream things. If I could just be the heel commentator, but the logical one, the logical heel, you know? Presenting always the viewpoint similar to what I do here when I talk about victims of U.S. imperialism. I want to make, because I've got a little platform. It could be decent for these like indie feds maybe to have me involved. I could tweet about it and let people know about it. You know, I'm in broadcasting. You know, why not? I could be a commentator. I would love to do that. I think that would be fun. I think I might actually reach out to Drew Onyx and see if I can get involved in it. I think that would be really funny. The new Jerry the King. Yeah, maybe in terms of charisma, less in terms of some of the other stuff that Jerry the King Lawler is famous for. Who'll be your Andy Kaufman? I think I'm the Kaufman in that scenario, though. I think I'm the Kaufman. Because I could do like the Kaufman I'm from Hollywood thing. The I'm from Hollywood gimmick. I have the brains, Mr. Lawler. I'm from Hollywood. I have the brains. I'm not like one of these wrestlers down in Memphis, Tennessee. Hey, Mr. Lawler? Is that how they talk in Memphis, Tennessee, Mr. Lawler? With the boo, 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 boo? If I started doing that stuff. I'm a political commentator, folks. I'm intelligent. I talk about geopolitics for a living. What am I even doing here? You know, if I could take that kind of attitude, like I'm above it. Like I'm above it and I'm above all the fans and the wrestlers and stuff. See, I could do that. I could really piss people off. I love those. That's some of my favorite shit ever, those Andy Kaufman promos. And like I was talking about, whenever this has come up before, like Andy Kaufman, his whole career, everything that he was doing in comedy was like blurring that line when he was performing, getting the audience to start asking this question of like, what am I seeing here? What is a performance and what is real? That's what Andy Kaufman spent his whole career doing, which is exactly why he thought he was attracted to wrestling, because that's what wrestling is about, is blurring that line, and no one blurred it more than Andy Kaufman, you know? I'm supposed to be watching Scanner Darkly with my Twitch stream right now, and I'm contractually obligated to be in this Hayseed Hick town. See, I could totally do that stuff. Coal Mine, JR and Heyman were a very good... That was one of the all-time best commentator duos, I think. Looking like a frisky stallion. Okay. Interesting comment from Monsieur Balls. Yeah, that was Punk's whole thing, right? The straight edge promos. I'm better than you, you know? Yeah, you have a commie or socialist manager wrestler and they can nuclear heat. Absolutely. I would love to do that. Did you miss the sub mourning? No, we didn't really mourn. I don't know. I mean, we all knew that they were not getting out of that situation, you know? The only real question is whether they slowly and horrifyingly suffocated to death on the bottom of the ocean, or just immediately imploded and died instantly. How do you feel about Kenny Omega? Just probably the best wrestler in the world. You know, probably between him and Danielson. They imploded for sure. We're in team implosion. an America bad heel, but ML for sure. They're like Nikolai Volkov. Does anyone listen to the Dudesy podcast? That and Rob are where I've learned everything I know about wrestling. Weird to hear a wrestler talk and it's not a Will Sasso impression. It would be fun to do like an actual wrestling podcast. There is kind of a market for it too. It's sometimes something I've thought about before, but I do only have limited time to do the podcasts and streaming and stuff that I do already, so I don't know if I'll ever get to it, but a bit of a fighting man. Do I look like a fighting man to you, Monsieur Balls? Do I look like a fighting man? I don't find that I do. I did like this promo from Juice Robinson. Did anyone see this Juice Robinson promo from last night? Where's my wrestling chat? This is fun. Juice Robinson, I was just saying today as well to some of my like wrestling DM people that I know, really bet on himself in like 2015, 2016. Had a prime spot as basically an enhancement guy on NXT, but he was on every big pay-per-view. He was always around. Seemed like he had a lot going for him and left NXT to go to New Japan and has really made a name for himself outside of WWE. Got to give it up for Juice Robinson.
Oh, punk! No! Why? Why do you want me to go to sleep so bad, huh? Why do you want me to go to sleep? I'm not tired. I'm fully rested. I got my 8 hours. You see bags under my eyes, boy? Huh? This Saturday night on Collision, I'm gonna do to you just what we did to Jeff Hardy. We're gonna hold your hands down, grab a roll of quarters, and break your jaw!
Juicy, 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 you're so loud. Let's bring it down.
Oh!
Jay White's laughing. Man, what a fun business. What a funny business. Thank you, Lodane. Thank you, Lodane. Would you say the juice is loose? I would say that, yeah. I would say that. That's what happens when I try to put my son to bed. When I try to put my son to bed at night.
Sleep. I'm not tired. I'm fully rested. I got my 8 hours. You see bags under my eyes, boy? Huh?
That's what he says. I for sure have bags under my eyes. Juice says he has become Joker-fied. He has. We've all been there. I was up at like 5:45 or some ungodly hour today. It's because I had to get up early. I had to get up at like 7, but last night I forgot to set my alarm. So I had one of those wake ups where I woke up and I was like, is it like 8? Fuck, like, and I was all out of it. And it was like 5:45. But then when you wake up like that, you can't just go back to sleep. It's 9:30, Dad. I still want to pay Switch. Yeah. I walk away for 5 minutes and there's a soy-facing caveman on screen. That's right, there is. Yes. Yes, there is. If Venom is calling you boy, I think he's walking all over you a bit. Yeah. He's not. You folks are still with the Venom thing, but he hasn't even mentioned Venom in probably a year. He really moved past the Venom thing. You know who my son is really obsessed with right now, which has been kind of a surprise to me. He's really obsessed with Looney Tunes. Like he loves Looney Tunes and like Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd and all the Looney Tunes characters and that stuff. But he's obsessed with the idea of voice acting, and he wants to know who's doing all the voices of the different characters. I mean, his favorite is probably Bugs. And he could tell you if you asked him like all the different voice actors that have voiced Bugs Bunny, he knows every single one. I swear, my kid is like he's the only 7-year-old kid in the fucking world. He's obsessed with this guy, Jeff Bergman, the voice actor of Bugs Bunny in like modern Looney Tunes things. And he's also done a number of other voice acting. He talks about him all the time. He loves Jeff Bergman. He's such a funny guy. I don't know. It's the stuff that he gets fixated on is really hilarious to me. It's really funny. Like he talks about this all the time. The different voice actors, and I'm going to make a cartoon and then he tells me what happens in the cartoon, and he tells me all the different voice actors that he's going to hire to play all the different roles. He tells me about this every single day. Every single day he talks to me about this. And because like for anything that you can fixate on, there's a YouTube video that like it caters to that exact obsession. So you can find videos on YouTube of like a list of every single person that's played each character and an example of like them talking. You know? He thinks about this so much. It's really amazing. That's why he loves Who Framed Roger Rabbit so much as well. Man, there's another part of the story that I could talk about, but now I have to, now that I've laughed about it. Because, like, I don't know, he kind of he's fixated on death a little bit as well. I guess maybe that's normal for some kids. And, like, he knows about Mel Blanc, the voice actor from the Looney Tunes, and how he died in the late 80s or whatever, and how he was in the hospital. And he's talked about, like, I wonder when Mel Blanc was in the hospital, maybe Jeff Bergman came to visit him and Mel Blanc said, Jeff, you can be the voice of Bugs Bunny now. And he's really thought about this. Like, he really thinks about this. You know? He spends time thinking about this, like a lot of time. It's very funny to me. It is dark, but yeah, I mean, it's good. I guess the kids can kind of like reckon with some of these big ideas. I thought you were going to say they both spoke as bugs to one another. I should explain. I should ask him about that. Maybe he would be excited by it. So he thinks that he's going to be hired as the next voice actor to do Bugs and all the different voices. He went to the hospital to finish him off and claim his birthright. That's how the voice is passed down. It's like Highlander. It's like a Highlander. It's like there can be only one kind of situation. And Bergman did what he had to do. He struck when Mel Blanc was at his weakest. And who can blame him, you know? Who will take over the mantle of Bugs Bunny? I wish I was grappling with these questions at 7. It's really funny. Like, he is a very funny guy. And I know there's this whole phenomenon of parents like making up weird and funny things that their kids say for like online clout or anything. But I fucking promise you, I am not whenever I talk about this stuff, I'm not exaggerating in any way. He really does spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. and he still loves superheroes, and like he's really into Batman and Joker, and he went to see the Flash the other day. He liked that a lot. He still likes that stuff, but there's a big part of his mind that's totally devoted to Looney Tunes and voice acting, and Simpsons as well, because we watched The Simpsons a lot together. And I showed him this video. And it kind of blew his mind. I showed him the Harry Shearer and Dan Castellaneta on Conan, and he really loved it. He wants to see this all the time.
Guys, it's been a while. I need a hit.
Let's catch up.
Yeah, let's start with you, Dan. Do you mind if we take a little stroll through all the different characters?
Yes.
Can you give us a little Homer, maybe?
Yeah, all right, a little Homer.
Yeah.
He loves this. Oh yeah, Sean, he loves Calvin and Hobbes for sure. It's one of his favorite things. But he wants Calvin and Hobbes to be a show. And I tried to explain to him, like, well, Bill Watterson, who made Calvin and Hobbes, he doesn't want it to be a show. He doesn't want it to be a show. He doesn't want Netflix to do it or whoever else. He just wants it to be the books, and that's all. And I think he's kind of fascinated with that, but he's always like, why can't he just like make it a show? Come on. He really wants it to be a show, but I've tried to explain Bill Watterson's like artistic integrity to him. And he kind of is like, all right, well, tough but fair kind of thing.
Then, of course, there's Krusty the Clown.
Right, Krusty.
I love late night. You can say anything. The cacta.
Grandpa Simpson, what are you people doing in my room? And of course, there's Mayor Quimby, not to be confused with
He
a
loved
certain
this,
politician
though.
from Massachusetts.
Right. Sorry.
And
What about Groundskeeper Willie?
Do it for Groundskeeper Willie.
Yeah.
Honestly, Sean, Calvin and Hobbes is really good for that kind of stuff. Like, because he learned to read like this year. Like, he's really become very good at reading in English. He needs more work in French, but he reads very well. And I think Calvin and Hobbes is so great to start reading on because it's written at a fairly high level with like fairly big words and like big vocabulary and big ideas in them. So it's been cool that I've been able to pass on my love of Calvin and Hobbes, and it's been one of the things that he's learned to read with, which also was the same for me. The whole thing is interesting for me because I've been reading Calvin and Hobbes since I was a little kid. And it's funny because you read Calvin and Hobbes and you're a little kid and you identify with Calvin, and now it's 30 years later, 35 years later, and I read it with my son and I identify with the dad. It's like a whole kind of full circle life kind of moment.
Everyone clean up after themselves when they leave.
Now, Harry, of course, when I was there, our favorite character to write for probably was Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns, C. Montgomery Burns.
Yeah.
You all work for me now.
Yeah.
Smithers, I've got a rocket in my pocket.
Yes, sir, I know, sir. But of course, I also do Principal Skinner. There'll be an assembly after school, and you all must attend. I do Dr. Julius Hibbert.
Oh, yeah.
Remember him? And this just in, Conan, I do Kent Brockman. So in case there's a vacancy downstairs in the news department, I've covered my share of fires.
Very nice. Now, I'm curious.
He loved this. He thought it was so cool. The stripper the dad flips out about all the types of peanut butter is so funny. Well, the dad, there's some great like kind of anti-capitalist stuff that comes out through the dad. Then the commercialization of holidays and, the whole ethos of Bill Waters. I mean, you can tell he resists this kind of like need to commodify everything and capitalize and commercialize everything. And that really comes out. I think one of the sweetest ones is Calvin. He borrows his dad's binoculars and he breaks them, and he's like really anxious about it, and he's trying to come up with some kind of scheme with Hobbs to put them back together, and he can't, obviously. And then he freaks out at the dinner table and admits that he did it, and the dad gets really mad and he's yelling and screaming, and it's kind of like scary a little bit. But then you see them afterwards, and he says, I'm sorry, I got so upset. And he's like comforting him, and it's kind of like a nice moment, And if you have kids, if you have father and son or father and daughter, you go through shit like that. And it means something to both of you. It's really great. It's really, it's become kind of almost a cliche, like it's Reddit or something to like Calvin and Hobbes, but it really is just an incredible accomplishment. It's an incredible artistic accomplishment, and I think it is really amazing that he could make a lot of money at this point. Now that like every single cherished childhood memory that you have, if you're one of these like millennials or elderly millennials, every single cherished childhood memory that you have has been repackaged and recycled and recommodified in your adulthood. And that's the one thing that has not happened to. And I'm sure there's a market for it. And I'm sure Netflix or Prime or whoever or Max or whatever streamer, Hulu or whatever streaming service could throw a ton of money at him to make it into something. And it's really actually genuinely quite impressive that he's refused to do that. If it's Reddit to like Calvin and Hobbes, then I'm very Reddit. Well, then that's the thing I have to admit is that there are parts of me that are very Reddit. I used to love Reddit. I stopped liking Reddit when it became this kind of like racist cesspool, or at least the racist cesspool that it already was floated to the surface. Then it became very alienating to me. And then you see all the problems behind that kind of like Redditor mentality. The I fucking love science mentality. Everyone loves Calvin and Hobbes. It's Reddit technically. You're the only one that gets it. The only people that don't get it is the people who have Calvin pissing stickers on their truck with truck nuts. Yeah, they definitely don't get it. They definitely do not get it. I really like being a dad. I gotta say. It was just Father's Day the other day. Like I said, we had a nice time. Had a really nice time spending time with him on Father's Day. We went to see the Flash movie. I really do love it. It's definitely not always easy being a parent. In fact, it can be quite difficult. But like, man, that's just one thing that I would never ever change in a million years. Did you love The Flash, though? No, I did not. I didn't love it, but I still enjoyed hanging out with them. I enjoyed hanging out with them and eating popcorn and watching the movie. Although at the end of the movie, I must admit, because, he gets fixated on things and he gets attached to things. He gets really attached to things, especially sometimes articles of clothing. And or just like a routine and things need to be a certain way, or he finds it very upsetting. And he gets really attached to like articles of clothing. And he has this hat. He has a hat. It was his big brother's hat from when he was a kid. And probably for the last like 2 years or so, maybe 3 years, whenever he goes outside, he wears this hat. He wears it backwards. I don't know really even where he got it from. I don't wear hats like that. His brother doesn't even wear hats like that. But he just wears this backwards hat. I recently bought him a new hat and introduced that, and he's worn that a couple times. So he's showing a little growth here and ability to let go of things. But at some point, like towards the end of the movie, we realized we didn't have his hat anymore. And then I was like, okay, don't worry about it. We'll find it. And the movie was over, and I was looking under the seat, like with my flashlight and everything, and couldn't find his hat. And he started really panicking and really getting upset. So that was like kind of a stressful part of the movie. He started getting very, very upset that we couldn't find his hat. And starting to freak out a little bit. But I got him to leave. I pulled him out of the theater, and when the credits were going, he was just like, my hat, like really starting to fucking lose it. And we went to the front desk, and we had left it on the little bench outside before we went in, and they brought it in the lost and found. And it was like a switch just turned off in his head. He was totally starting to lose it, totally losing composure. And he just got his hat back, and it was just like, whoop, and just right back to normal. We got it back. Did you see the Spider-Man? Yeah, I liked the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I think I liked the original more. I talked about it a little bit after I saw it. I talked about I think I enjoyed the original more. It was kind of a more of a self-contained story. I think even though the original Spider-Verse movie introduced this kind of multiverse idea and did it a really interesting way, already that multiverse idea, now that the Spider-Man No Way Home and The Flash are leaning heavily into this thing, and it's really kind of like this kind of hollow storytelling device to just do a bunch of fan service and show characters and other actors, and you can tell these kind of somewhat lame stories and lower the stakes on a lot of stories. But so I think there was a bit of fatigue from that for me with the new Spider-Verse movie. It's very much leaning into this being this kind of meta commentary on storytelling and this kind of stuff, which is cool, and it's very good. It's very well done, but I think I have a bit of superhero multiverse fatigue. If you're 70 and you've had a hat for 2 years, that's your whole life. Yeah, that's right. That's right. He was really getting very upset. I was starting to feel very bad for him, but I kept my composure. And I was able to calmly handle the situation and get him his hat back, and it was fine. It's the number 10 movie on Letterboxd. Yeah, I would say, Doc, that's in overrated territory. It doesn't mean that it's not good. It is good, and I enjoyed it. I'm also looking forward to seeing the next one. But I think I found it a little underwhelming. Visually stunning, though. Visually just fantastic. I guess eventually we should talk about news and stuff, right? At some point I should talk about news and politics and what have you. I should also remind people eventually that since we're going on, a little bit, remind everyone that if you enjoy this stream and you enjoy having these kinds of conversations, and if for whatever reason you like to tune into this program and watch me eat noodles and talk about films and talk about being a dad and the weird stuff my son is obsessed with and whatever else we talk about, well, if you enjoy that and you like tuning into that every day, please, if you can, support TRRS. You can subscribe for $5 per month. You can subscribe completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account, which you can very easily convert to a Twitch Prime sub, totally free. Every little bit helps. I appreciate every little bit of assistance and help that I get from this community to continue doing this program. I really love doing this stream, and I really love this community. And every sub, every gifted sub, every fistful of friend coin or Patreon sub or tip or whatever, everyone helps so much, and I appreciate it so much. It's the only way that I'm able to keep this show on the air. And I thank everyone for their support, and I thank everyone in advance, all the dozens of you that are just rushing to.
You can count on me. You're going to have good
support
old
the
Rob
stream.
to talk you through all this.
Many of you are very, very generous, and I really appreciate it a lot. And thank you, Dimitri, for the gifted sub. Dimitri says, did you ever watch Everything Everywhere All at Once? Great movie, but I remember thinking the whole industry is going to make this the next storytelling gimmick. It does seem like that, and I didn't hate it, Dimitri, but I think it became such a phenomenon and became so overrated, and the way it won every single award made me like it even less. I was already kind of underwhelmed because I had seen this kind of talk, it's just the greatest thing ever, it's the best movie, it's this, it's that. And I watched it and I was like, okay, yeah, all right. It's fun, it's I thought maybe talking things being Reddit, I did think trying a little bit too hard to be like random and wacky, and like that's the whole like written into like the plot of the film.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
You know. Thank you, Vlad, for the 2 gifted subs. Yeah, it's a bourgeois. It is a very bourgeois kind of narrative, for sure. I mean, when I thought it was like at first when it's just this movie. I've talked about this before, so we don't need to relitigate all this. But at first, when I thought it was just like this kind of like drama comedy about this
You've just
immigrant
become
family,
an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
I was way more on board with just the general idea of the drama of the story before it goes off into this like wacky sci-fi martial arts random Reddit humor direction. I kind of thought it should just be a movie about this family, which I thought was like the actors were great. Like the cast is fantastic. I probably would have just appreciated to see a movie just about that family kind of struggling to make ends meet.
Talk you through all
and this had this kind of immigrant story about what it's like to be this immigrant family in modern day America. I thought that's more of an interesting take than doing this. Oh, look, I got hot dog fingers. Woo. Oh, isn't that crazy? Wow. Hot dog fingers, you know? Michelle Yeoh is a fucking legend. That's for sure. And I got to say as well, thank you so much to Gen X Bushy. Thank you, Gen X Bushy, for the 5 gifted subs and for all the support that you've shown this stream. Thank you, Gen X Bushy, so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you also to Catalepsy Kills for the 5 months of Prime. Thank you. I know the slub counter isn't working. I have to do it manually. I don't want to hand it to any of these to some of the trolls that we have in here, but ever since that fucking racist troll came in here, and I had to adjust a bunch of the settings in Stream Elements, it's fucked. I've not been able to like get it to work properly since that time. So, thanks to that fucking asshole for doing that time. That's about accepting alienation and deteriorating conditions so that you understand you're unique. Yeah. Don't fight back. I loved Banshees of Inisherin. I thought that should have gotten way more awards recognition. I thought it was fantastic. So we are close to a hype train as well, folks. And we could get through this hype train here and maybe make the number go up a little bit, and then we can have some important substantive discussion about the news. And maybe watch some video content from one of our many correspondents and friends of the stream. So once again, folks, we've got a minute left to possibly kick off this hype train. If you support the stream, if you enjoy this kind of commentary, if you want to support the community, please, if you can, subscribe. You must subscribe. Slubscribe.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub. And thank you, Ben
You can count
Bamboo,
on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
for the gifted sub as well. Thank you to you both, and thank you to Kafrika.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Thank you, Kafrika, for the 300 friend coin as well. You simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account. Have I seen Come and See? No, I haven't. I had to just look it up to because I know that I've heard of this before, and I'm pretty sure it's because you have talked about it in this stream, Dimitri. I didn't see Crimes of the Future, but it did seem like Cronenberg back to operating at a very high level, which you just like to see. So do any other kind and generous chatters want to support TRRS? What about this? What if I do some gentle swaying? Yesterday the gentle swaying was kind of a hit. What about that? What about a little gentle swaying? Would that convince you to Sub just a little bit more. Would some gentles? Could I interest you in some gentle swaying? I think there might be someone at my door. 1 sec. Sorry,
You can
no.
count on me.
No
You're gonna
gentle
have good
swaying for
old
you.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Sorry, that was kind of a letdown. I just received a package. Sorry, I will do gentle swaying, okay? I will do some gentle swaying. I just received a package. It's actually not that interesting. It's a package of underpants, which I just ordered. I just received a package of underpants that interrupted my gentle swaying. Oh God! And thank you though to Diego again. Thank you for another gifted sub, Diego. Okay, here we go. You want a gentle swing? You got it. All right. Here we go. If any other takers, I'm a grown adult 40-year-old man, by the way, doing this. You know, I try to talk about like important issues, but then I end up doing this. And weirdos on the internet, for some reason, give me money. I don't know why.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I need to get out the entire version of that. On this Audio MIDI Mania website. How about this? Thank you, Part Ian, for the gifted sub. Very much appreciated. Anything else? We got 30 seconds left, folks. 30 seconds left. Here you go, one more. One more. You hear another gifted sub. these are just previews. Really, I need the whole genuine article. Okay, I guess that'll have to do. That'll have to do it. I wonder if sometimes my enemies tune into this and they're just like, what is this guy doing? Who is this guy? People watch this? Imagine there's some like CSIS handler watching me right now. And like they're at their cubicle just like, what am I doing with my life? Is CSIS guy? What are you? It's a good question. What are you doing with your life? Why are you watching this? Why does the government think it's important for you to watch this, CSIS agent watching this stream? You ever think about that? Do I really look like a dangerous, subversive, radical person that you need to be watching their every move? No. Look at me. Look at me. I'm swaying gently to Alan Parsons Project online. So, weird strangers online give me $5. Is that really something you need to be spending your time doing? Really? So we thought this guy was meddling with elections, but he's air drumming. Exactly. They get to spend every other day editing Wikipedia, so there's a bit of variety. Exactly. When whoever pulls the Rob card that in the office that week must be, oh, nice. I lucked out. It's the kind of hypnotic brainwashing that the communists are known for. That's right. Absolutely. I don't know. Oh, you know, I saw this. I gotta watch. Look at this. Speaking of CSIS, thank you everyone for supporting the stream. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't think sorry's easily said. Don't cry, turn the tables instead. Did I have my music on this whole time? Oh, fucking Christ. I can't hear it sometimes, so I forget that I leave it on. You've taken lots of chances before, but I ain't gonna div anymore. Don't ask me. That's how it goes, 'cause part of me knows what you're thinking. Don't say words you're gonna regret. Don't let fire rush to your head. I've heard the accusations before, but I ain't gonna give any more. Don't ask me. That's how it goes. I'm mixing up all the lyrics. God, what a great song. Marty, if you're watching the VOD later, that one's for you. I really turned Marty onto that song. CSIS report, 22 June. Known China shill Rob Rousseau apparently spends most of his time swaying and talking about wrestling. That's how he drags you into his web of radicalism and subversiveness. The whole CSIS office is addicted to rain, fighting over apple tears, and have also banned discussing Steely Dan in the office. It would be really funny, honestly, to know. It's just nice to be appreciated, you know, even if you're being appreciated by intelligence agencies that think that you're, trying to destroy the country, which is, of course, not true in my case. Anyway, check this out. You know, CSIS has been a big part of this whole, like, Chinese interference storyline, or the only part, as we talked about before. They've been, like, the central part of these accusations in our media. Look at this thread from June 20th, from CSIS Canada. You know, it wasn't enough just to launder these ideas through their compliant little assets in whatever passes for the media establishment in this country. These cowardly stenographers for the security state, the people that make up the journalism establishment in this country. So it wasn't enough for CSIS just to manipulate those people. Now they're in themselves with this thread. They're raising the alarm, folks. They've been raising the alarm in the media, and now here they are again on Twitter. Canadians beware. The People's Republic of China's intelligence services are targeting Canadian citizens inside and outside of Canada. Have you heard about this, folks? Have you heard about this? This is very scary stuff. This is very scary stuff. This thread explains how targets are approached and cultivated. Don't be a target of Chinese intelligence services online recruitment. CSIS is ringing the alarm bells on this, folks. We're through the looking glass here, people. Yeah, please target me. We're going to get to that. I volunteer as tribute. Step 1. The TRRS. They could have changed the acronym enough. They could call it the pricks to really grind their gears. The TRRS identifies Canadian recruitment targets by using proxies, also known as targeters. They identify people who are actively looking for jobs in strategic sectors or who have high value credentials. Step 2. The TRRS then approaches their target undercover via LinkedIn, posing as anything from an HR recruiter to security consultants. They then move the communication to secondary platforms at the earliest opportunities, such as WeChat, WhatsApp, or email. I gotta get on LinkedIn, I guess. This is where all the action's happening, is on LinkedIn, I guess. Step 3. Not knowing the true motive, targets are asked to write reports for client consultants in exchange for payment. Targets may also be invited to meetings with clients. Both the consultant and the client are, in fact, intelligence officers. Step 4. These new recruits start receiving payments in exchange for confidential privileged information that is of interest to the PRC. Don't become a target of TRRS recruitment. Be careful who you connect with on LinkedIn and all other online platforms. And here's what I'm seeing. The economy, like we all know, times are tough right now. There's a lot of people that are trying to have a hard time. There are a lot of people having a hard time making ends meet right now. And here you have China coming in, trying to offer a jobs program to people in Canada. And you've got CSIS complaining about it. They're trying to offer employment and steady a paycheck in these uncertain times, and we're mad at them for it. We're criticizing them for it. You know? That's the thing. It's like if they're recruiting somewhere, I'd like to know if there's a website where you can just sign up to get a job. I would be more than happy. I was actually looking at the possible jobs for CGTN the other day, even though that's a whole weird mess, the people that run a CGTN in the States. But I was actually looking for this. Like, believe me, if there's people out there that want to target somebody to do agitprop or whatever, it's like, I'm right here. No, you don't. There doesn't need to be this whole game of footsie where it's like, oh, you're meeting with this consultant and this client. Like, you can just tell me we're with China and we want you to do propaganda on behalf of our government. I'd just be like, sure, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds fine to me. I'd be totally comfortable in talking to all of you and being open and honest about that with everybody. How much money do we give these jokers? They put out this trashy design. Seriously. Don't become a target. And you can see there's a little target reticule over the exclamation point there. Very scary. Somehow China just does UBI for fun and gives it to the whole planet, and the monthly check comes with just a list of job offers. Seriously. Sounds terrible. Oh my. Sounds scary. Where do we sign up for the new Cold War? We got to fight back against this. Please contact the Rousseau Institute for Western Destabilization. Maybe Western stabilization would be a better way to put that. That'd maybe not be so scary for some people. I do genuinely, and this is something that I think I should work on this summer, is making the Rousseau Institute like a real thing. Like, I have to a website with an about and a mission statement. You know, I would actually really like to do that. We do want to bring stability. I mean, the whole joke about like we don't want to destabilize things so people are. It's the whole point is that it's unstable now. And when like the CIA or CSIS talks about destabilization elsewhere around the world, what they're saying is like land reform, healthcare, free education, literacy, social programs, price freezes, planned economy. Like that's what when they're saying destabilization around the world. Russia is causing destabilization, or the Soviet Union example during the Cold War, or China is causing destabilization with their trade deals they're making throughout Africa. Like that's what that word means. So that's what not that you people need me to explain that to you, but like that's what the joke is about the Rousseau Institute of Western Destabilization, is that we're calling for the kind of scary destabilization that happens in these countries to happen in our own country, rather than this like dying, collapsing neoliberal hell that we're trapped in with deteriorating social services, no job prospects, no housing prospects, increasingly expensive education, rising fascism and intolerance, further antagonism towards the rest of the world, including China. Like that's the stabilization that we have now. And yeah, if that's what stable is, yeah, I would like to destabilize that. I would like to make it into a real thing, though. I would like to have an actual conference at some point. I would like to have a website, and yeah, reach out to people and for funding, just like a think tank. Is there? You know what? There is a TRRS Substack, and I just haven't used it. And you know what? I should. It was supposed to be the vehicle for like the audio version of this show, and a possibility of a place that I could write some stuff as well. And I just it's so hard for me to just do this stream and also do the podcast that I do with Jordan and also deal with like my day-to-day life, that I just have not been able to do it. An actual nonprofit. Step 2, profit immensely. That's right. But put out white papers. Exactly. I would really genuinely want to do this. So maybe that's something I can work on. Maybe there can actually be a newsletter, and there can actually be I could do a weekly newsletter, fucking one per week. I could do that. And then there'd be another place for you folks to subscribe at. Wouldn't that be wonderful? If there was yet another place where you folks could subscribe to my content. I know many of you are asking yourselves, I wish there was more. I wish there was more places that I could contribute to Rob's commentary and analysis. Well, maybe there could be. I would like to be an RIWD fellow. You'd absolutely get pulled in, Old Dutch, because of your work in the design. You've already done important work for the Institute, so you're in as far as I'm concerned. Start a tiered system, Rob, for contribution. That would be wild. That would be wild and wacky if I were to do that. Imagine. Can you imagine? If I started some kind of tiered reward system for people, that would be pretty wild stuff. Hey, Netlocked, how's it going? Anyway, it's just funny, this CSIS raising the alarm bell. I mean, we've been talking about the new Cold War now for going on 3 years. It's really kicking into high gear. Like, this is very new Cold War. This entire storyline of the way CSIS has been planting these stories in the media about Chinese interference with our democracy. They're putting out these warnings about being targeted to become assets for the People's Republic of China Intelligence Service. And I'm saying, like, I would be more than happy to be an asset. More than happy. And if anyone's watching that's interested in pulling me into your devious web of misinformation or whatever it is, propaganda, just reach out. There's no need to go through all this subterfuge. An annual newsletter would be a good bit. Can we start a university movement and have chapters across the country and get TRRS and the Friendship Triangle family of programs syndicated across the world? We could do that if actual like college students listen to this program. Except all you fucking elderly millennials. We're all these layabout elderly millennials. And there's like 3 people that are actually still in school being like, oh yeah, I like this. You know? If maybe some younger people would eventually start tuning in also. In addition to you old fuckers. I know there's a few youngins, and I do genuinely, and I appreciate the old people as well. I mean, look at me, I'm fucking old. I'm an old person in university, there we go. But I do appreciate what the few younger people and Zoomers that we have in here. We got a couple. We got a handful. And I very much appreciate that. What sounds better, the People's Liberation Army or the Royal Canadian Armed Forces? Just like, give me a fucking break. For the generation whispers, my friends, the triangle transcends. Absolutely. Anyway, it is the summer of TRRS, as many people have said. Many people are saying this. Let's watch a video of some kind, because I think I've done a lot of talking over the last couple of days. I also missed the stream yesterday, or whenever that was, Tuesday, and I'm not totally certain whether I'm going to be streaming tomorrow either. It's my kid's last day of school. I could talk about his whole thing earlier. Well, it's his last day of school today. So don't totally know what's happening tomorrow. Hot rib summer. Slummer. I need to learn how to write for politics. I've never done that, but I used to write a decent amount in general. Maybe reading more could help, but no, not worth the risk. I mean, it does help. But the thing is, Sean, I've heard you talk about these things, you know, and I've seen you writing in short spurts about it, so I know you have the ability to do it. It's just sometimes when you have bad brain, something gets lost between here and here, you know? This is exactly why I'm here on this stream rather than being a writer myself, because I find it much easier to sit down and talk into a microphone, because these ideas you're sitting there and the camera's on and the microphone's on and you just have to say stuff. It's like therapy kind of. So you just start saying stuff and then the ideas come out. But when you want to take the ideas and write them down on a piece of paper, that's where I have a problem. That's where I run into issues. I sit down, time to do this writing now, and it's like, and then like 5 hours pass. And you got a deadline coming up, and it's like, I have a deadline coming up. I've had 5 hours to do this, and I've done nothing. I'm a piece of shit. Worthless. That's my writing process. It sucks, and I hate it. I was actually thinking about trying to get someone to give me money to write a book at some point as well, but I know, like, I could have maybe a possibility of maybe getting a book pitch through. Don't do it. Don't do it, chat. Just this one time. Just leave it. This one time for me. Just drop it. Okay? Just drop it. Anyway, I know that I could have a possibility of like getting a book pitch accepted, which would be great, and I've always wanted to write a book, but I know that if I ever like actually agreed to do that, I would be like, fuck, I have to write a book now, and I would be miserable. I would be so miserable every single day until it was finished that I don't even know if I want to go through that, want to put myself through that. One day I will finish my novella that I started like 12 years ago now. I can just finish the third act of my novella that I started 12 fucking years ago, which is actually quite good. I think. I like it a lot. I honestly still like it. And I just need to write the third act, and it's been 12 years, and I've still not done it. And I got a script I need to finish, and I haven't done that either. A novella I didn't know you could write in Spanish. Ooh. Let's ruin our November. Well, fuck. It would be very satisfying for me to finish this thing. You know what? Part of it as well, even though I like the what I've written in this book that I'm referring to, I was really inspired by like Breaking Bad and just the idea of having this really rotten main character. And the whole point of the book is you see this really terrible person get put through the ringer, and it's kind of satisfying. King Yuan, you just couldn't resist. You just couldn't resist. But then I think the way that this whole thing about like these anti-heroes have played out in our culture over the last 10 years or so has kind of turned me off on it. When you see these people like idolizing the people, and I wouldn't want to like anyone to think that that's what I was doing, that I was trying to write a character. It's not like Breaking Bad, the story, but it's a character who's a horrible person and is going on this journey of making a bunch of horrible narcissistic decisions and getting involved in this escalating series of consequences for it. Yeah, it is a dime a dozen now, and it's like I wouldn't want people to think that I was trying to write someone that's like cool that you should look up to. You know, it's like this horrible piece of this like delusional narcissist, which obviously I know nothing about. Nothing. So I guess that's one reason why I haven't finished it, although just for the sake of fucking doing it, maybe I should eventually. Just to say that I did it. You know? Anyway, let's find something to look at here. Let's find like a video to watch. What time is it? 2:09. I gotta go in about an hour and 15 minutes. So I think we have time now to watch some kind of a video. So let's see what we have here. Show it to nobody, finish it, and show it to nobody, then write the book you will show people. God, that's what I think. That writing a book is just like painful. Writing a fucking 1,500 word article is painful to me. Writing a book is just miserable. If Falling Down was definitely ahead of its time, I think. I haven't seen that in a long time. Oh, this looks good. You know what? This is a great opportunity to look at this video. Because what do I talk about often? Canada's role as the kind of junior partner in Anglo-imperialism. And it's a great opportunity now, talking about that CSIS video, to watch this clip from two friends of the stream. We got two friends of the stream here, Rania Kalik and Justin Poder, both former guests of the show. I had a fantastic time talking to each of them. And it's happy to see on Breakthrough News this video about Canada wins Best Supporting Actor in U.S. Imperial Order with Justin Poder. I think a great opportunity to look at that video. What do we think of that, folks? Let's just change the title here, and we can watch this clip. I really enjoyed Justin's writing and commentary, and I really enjoyed having him on the show. Jesus. Okay. I mean, it's one of my favorite subjects to talk about, Canada's role in upholding Western imperialism. No one better to talk about it than Justin Poder, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Rania Kalik on Breakthrough News. Here it is, and I'm going to get a beverage.
What was this policy that Canada has of being a little bit better than the US that totally depends on everything going on in the US? So it's always like a good cop, bad cop kind of situation. Canada can't do what it does or get away with what it gets away with unless the US is there doing the bad cop work. So you have to understand it as part of a system. It's the same with, like analogous to the Republicans and Democrats in the US, right? It's like Canada and the US. It's like the Democrats love that the Republicans are so right wing so that they can say, well, at least we're not them. And Canada has that with the US.
That dynamic is so real.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Kalik, and this is Dispatches. In popular culture, Canada is seen as the nicer version of the US. It's America's harmless northern neighbor. While the US is this aggressive, hyper-capitalist, dog-eat-dog place that's constantly launching expensive wars while Americans are drowning in student and medical debt and die due to lack of access to healthcare and mass shootings, Canada is pleasant. It has free healthcare, schools affordable, and it doesn't appear to be gratuitously bombing several different countries in the global south. But things aren't always what they seem on the surface. Behind that shiny exterior is a European settler colony that has and continues to commit atrocities against the indigenous communities on which it was built. Canada is also home to many far-right exile communities that play a role riling up support for this or that American proxy war, from China to Ukraine. It's viciously anti-Palestinian, and its mining companies make a killing exploiting Latin American and African resources. Canada also plays a crucial supporting role in U.S. aggression abroad, adding a layer of respectability and liberalism as the good cop to the U.S. bad cop, and wars and coups from the Middle East to Haiti and Honduras. Here to discuss Canada's role in the U.S.-led imperial order is Justin Potter, a professor at York University in Toronto, and author of many books, including Extraordinary Threat, Haiti's New Dictatorship, America's Wars on Democracy in Rwanda and the DR Congo, and Siege Breakers. He's also host of the Anti-Empire Project podcast. But before we jump into it, this is just the first half of this episode. The second half is available for Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/Breakthrough News. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can also donate below on YouTube.
And you should all do this.
Justin, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be back.
I'm so happy to have you back on. It's always such a fun conversation. And today we have so much to talk about.
So much.
So much. So you're actually coming to me from the country, which we're going to be discussing. So you're coming to me on the ground from the place that we're talking about. Yeah. Absolutely. And that is, of course, Canada. Where in Canada
Trudeau
are you?
regime.
Toronto?
Toronto, yeah. Toronto.
Okay. All right. So you're in the heart. Some might call it the heart of Canada.
The financial capital for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you were mentioning to me, and when you and I were like talking about this topic, like I love the way you framed it, because you're talking about because my whole question is okay, I want to talk about Canada in this context of U.S. imperialism, right? Canada's always thought of as this kind of superior, more polite country. Even Americans look at it that way. They're like, oh, Canada's so nice. And we can talk about whether that's true or not. Maybe there are in fact some things about Canada that are much nicer than the US. There's no question there. However, it is interesting because Canada is this small country, right? Like you mentioned, it has a population around 39 million, which isn't very much. It's like a little bit more than Venezuela.
Yeah, a little bit less. A little bit less than Afghanistan.
There you go.
We love to pretend we're the big bosses
despite
of the world.
Not having that many people in it, right? It's a part of the G7, which you were talking to me about. It's this country that is part of the Five Eyes alliance, right? This like anti-China alliance, really, if we want to call it what it actually is, between Canada, Australia, New Zealand, US, and UK. The intelligence,
Sharing.
Five Eyes. It's such a creepy name.
According to CSIS, and again, according to CSIS and their helpful little typing monkeys in the Canadian media establishment, according to them, even though we are an integral part of this Five Eyes alliance, as Rania puts it, this anti-China alliance, according to CSIS and the Conservative Party, and apparently the NDP as well, who've also talked about this, we're basically like a subsidiary of China. We're basically like just being constantly controlled and manipulated by China, even though we've played this open role in the geopolitical level of like completely antagonizing them and being this central part of the anti-China global alliance that's designed to keep them in check. According to CSIS, though, we're basically just a Chinese province now at this point. So that's pretty amazing stuff.
Creepy.
Could it be any creepier than that? Maybe. But anyways, there are bigger countries like Afghanistan. There's certainly bigger economies. Yet Canada sits at the sort of top of the hierarchy when it comes to the global order. And on top of that, there's so many other interesting aspects of Canada, like the fact that it's like fanatically pro-Israel, to the point where like politicians across the country are kind of always like fighting each other to prove how much they love Israel and hate Palestine and BDS. Yeah. And then I thought there was like another interesting thing about Canada, because also in the US, we don't learn Canadian history. We just learn US history, if you could even call it that. We learn a version of US history.
Whatever you're allowed to learn. In certain states, I guess you're not even allowed to learn.
I mean, you're not really allowed to learn like what the Civil War was about. But that's a show for another day. But Canada, I mean, you also had mentioned to me how Canada until 1947 had no actual Canadian citizenship, which sounds so crazy. Yeah. So Canada was considered British North America.
Big country.
That's the history. Yeah.
Which is so wild. So there's a lot to talk about here. We're going to talk about Canada domestically. We're going to branch out to Canada internationally on the global stage and stuff like that.
It's not real.
But I think a good place to start is what everybody
here is
wondering,
total fabrication.
Which is, why is there British royalty on your money? It's strange and slightly embarrassing.
Yeah.
This one was invented by a writer.
So British royalty, we have the Queen on our money. And soon we're going to have King Charles on the money. So they're going to spend, they're going to spend
I'm going to be so upset when that day comes. When we get King Charles on the money, I'm going to be so upset.
King Charles on the money because Canada is historically and I suppose currently by its constitution, the head of state is the monarch in Britain. So weird. It's not a republic, right? The US is a republic. Canada's not a republic. It's considered a constitutional monarchy, although there are debates about whether we have a constitution. We don't have a constitution like you have a constitution in the US. We have a charter of rights. Anyway, that history is also pretty strange, but it's not that exciting to get into. But the point is,
no, for sure, Crad Babes.
The person who owns
that's Canada. The amazing. It's really the amazing thing, the like colonialist mentality and the arrogance when you see like Trudeau on these global stages, or thinking you can lecture fucking Maduro, or you can lecture Putin, or you can lecture President Xi of China, of all people. There's literally nothing about Canada that makes it worthy of being in the top tier, other than they're just another white country. For sure, not population size, not size of the economy. It's literally just we're just part of America with just a slightly different kind of system. Like we're just a northern resource extraction colony of America, and that's why we're included in this list of like the top countries, the G7 and all this stuff. North Atlantic Australia. Yeah, it's like we're all part of this big settler blob. And we're just one part of that. the dumpy cousin of the U.S. Johnny, did you get banned or something? Or you had a different account? The times like that when I love She's almost terrifying unflappability. The poker face king. Just unamused by this Western nonsense. He's going to get lectured by fucking pretty boy, Nepo baby, Justin Trudeau. He's going to get lectured by him. He's just like, no. We're not doing this. To create separation between the joint account with Pat and the things I say. That makes sense.
Canada is at the moment King Charles. So we have huge amounts of land that are called Crown land.
Crown land. We got to give that back.
Crown of the King of England. So the
Get rid of this
treaties
crown
with
land.
Indigenous nations that basically give Canada access to the land, those are with the Crown. And that's the crown of the King of England. So the King of England right now
got to give the land
is
back.
The person who who really actually. And I don't know. I don't think he's ever exercised this in a long time. But I do sometimes wonder what would happen if he decided to assert his ownership over this country.
I mean,
probably most of us would love it because we're a bunch of freaks.
I'm so sorry that you have to have money with that.
We're a bunch of bootlicking freaks. We'd probably love it.
I guess this speaks to the larger
please,
point.
sir.
I mean, all jokes
we would love
aside,
to have a king.
The fact that Canada is in fact a settler colony. Which is not typically like thought of that way. For I don't really know what reason, but
I think it's a matter of time.
Walk us through that because it's quite interesting because Canada wasn't just a settler project of the British; it was also a settler project of the French, and there's like ongoing disputes that are quite confusing around Quebec because of that. But yeah, walk us through like this. We can say Canada might have nice aspects to it today, but the kinds of sort of settler colonization that we saw in America that we know to be the case for what's today the U.S. was similar in Canada, and then also had some interesting distinctions that the country continues to apologize for, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. So
we've considered apologizing.
I'll take you through a little bit of what I would consider mainstream Canadian history. So we do learn this, not exactly all of these details, but for the most part, we do learn this in school, in high school. So you were saying Americans learn American history. Everybody learns American history. No,
I don't think that's Rania.
But in Canada, people also learn.
Crybabies, you may be confusing Rania Kalik for Max Blumenthal's wife, Anya. Because she's been doing that more and more.
Canadian history. So Canada was a French colony first. Mm-hmm. And that we are all taught this myth that French colonialism was a little bit more benevolent, that there was this, friendly relationship between the French and the indigenous people, which is not the case. The French were
or Samira Khan,
known to be bringers of
Amanda.
tremendous disease.
Amanda knew exactly who that comment was directed at. Hey, Amanda, thank you for joining us.
They stole, they kidnapped people. They forced women to marry them. There was high mortality rates
so
from
horrible.
Smallpox, and so
one of the worst accounts.
There's
really.
this fur trade. So there's a lot Canadians learn about the fur trade. And again, this is like this fun thing where these coureurs de bois rode their canoes and they got furs.
It was great to see the fur traders get owned in the Predator movie there.
Again,
Prey.
The fur trade led
that was a fun aspect of that.
Fairly systematically to the extinction of the beaver. The beaver was the animal whose fur was being traded. And then as Canada pushed west into what's western or the prairies now, that we then followed that with the extinction of the buffalo. Mm-hmm. There's also a history of forcing alcohol on Indigenous nations. Some of them tried to resist. They saw the damage that alcohol was doing, and they were basically forced. It was forced on them at gunpoint. So there's this was all during the benign period of
we talked yesterday
colonization,
about
right? And then
biological warfare and about how the ways that like biological warfare has been like a central part of the settler colonialist project. And we talked about opium in China. We should probably talk about the ways that alcohol was used as well as part of the genocide of the indigenous peoples, was intentionally used as a way to subjugate and enslave and commit genocide against the people that lived here previously, which probably should be under that same kind of category.
Benign.
Not only did we use disease and germ warfare like that very intentionally against indigenous people, but you used drugs and alcohol as well, very intentionally and deliberately, which is still a source of huge instability, and it's still contributing to the genocide of indigenous peoples to this day.
And then things get bad in the 19th century by comparison. So 1857, Canada passes a law called the Gradual Civilization Act. So if you're an indigenous nation or a
Sounds
First Nation
sinister.
and people start talking about gradual civilization, you know something horrible is coming. And then in 1856, there's the Indian Act. And the Indian Act...
and our First Nation band council system is part of that Indian Act.
It was a politician that was involved in passing it. He says, our Indian legislation generally rests on the principle that the Aborigines are to be kept in a condition of tutelage and treated as wards or children of the state.
Still to this day.
The true
Still
interests of
going
the
on.
Aborigines and of the state alike require that every effort should be made to aid the red man in lifting himself out of his condition of tutelage and dependence. And that is clearly our wisdom and our duty through education and every other means to prepare him for a higher civilization.
That's what the residential school system was.
And responsibilities of full citizenship. So that's very typical, like, white man's burden. It's around the same time, civilizing mission talk. But again, I don't know whether people know that Canada was a very eager participant in this. So the other thing that Canadians and First Nations in Canada like to remind people of is the pass system. So after the Indian Act, the goal of Canada was to force all the First Nations onto small reserves, and this was relatively difficult to do because Indigenous people didn't want to go. But then there was a series of famines in the 1880s, and it was the famines that were used to force them onto reserves. They said basically...
That's really weird because we're only supposed to ever talk about one famine. I thought there was only one famine that ever happened. There was only one famine that ever happened that forever colors, forever is this something that's hung around the neck of this civilization, hung around the neck of the very idea of socialism. There's one famine that happened in Ukraine in the 20s and 30s, and there was never a famine before that or after that. There was never famines, or except in China, of course. But it's interesting how we seem to ignore a lot of the very common famines and the ways that our civilizations were founded on deliberately inflicting these kind of famines on indigenous people. You have the Irish famine, you have the Bengal famine in India, like it's this very common thing. But we can only ever talk about one. We have to have an annual recognition of the one famine that happened, which apparently is something that just permanently discredits the idea of socialism, permanently discredits the Soviet Union, permanently discredits the leader of the Soviet Union at that time, whose name escapes me. But all these other famines, which we were directly responsible for and deliberately inflicted on people, of course, we don't want to talk about those. Kind of interesting how that works, isn't it?
You go on the reserve and we'll provide you with emergency famine relief. If you don't go on the reserve, we won't. You can starve and die. And in some cases, they starved them anyway. In other cases, they gave them actual poisoned food, poisoned pork. There was a
biological
case where
warfare.
Many Native people died from eating poisoned pork. They were forced to eat. They knew it was poison, but one of the officials said they will eat the bacon or die.
We're starving after we eliminated their primary food source.
So, and like at that time, the Conservative Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, was in Parliament, and he had to answer questions from the Canadian
Yeah, I
Liberal
saw
Party
that,
who were
Matt. Sicko Ron mandated several hours a year teaching about the horrors of communism. Of course, while simultaneously making it illegal to teach actual American history and the horrors that America itself is founded on. Incredibly fucking disturbing shit.
saying you're spending too much money on feeding Native people. And he said, don't worry, we're actually saving as much money as possible by keeping them on the edge of starvation. So that's that's like the conservatives answering the liberals, saying the liberals were saying we were spending too much money. So after they're all confined on reserves by the end of the 19th or the beginning of the 20th century, that's when Canada starts stealing their children and taking them to residential schools where there are death rates of 40 to 50% in some cases. And there's a whistleblower, a doctor who inspects these residential schools, and he finds basically that it's deliberate. He's like, there's no way that we can create these conditions and not be creating these conditions that are
mobile Stalin's victims with my fourth grader.
And he makes a report to the health commissioner, and he's immediately fired, basically. So he's Dr. Peter Bryce. He's the book, you can go on archive.org and you can read his report.
Mm-hmm.
But he got pushed out for
so it was like whistleblower, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, and then here's another quote for you from Duncan Campbell Scott, who was I think he was the health minister at one point. I think he was the Minister of Indian Affairs, 1910. He says, basically, even though the Indigenous children are dying at a much higher rate in the schools than in their villages, this alone does not justify a change in the policy of this department, which is geared towards the final solution of our Indian problem. So you've heard that language.
Wow, where's that? That sounds so familiar, Justin.
And that language,
final solution.
Remember that language comes after, right? So Hitler is talking about that 30 years after. Canada gets there long before, right? And this is what people, people think of like Hitler and the Nazis, but Hitler and the Nazis were following what the British were doing in North America, and they were following what the US was doing in the US. And the thing about this is all happening in parallel to the exact same things happening in the US to Indigenous nations in the US. And whenever Canada's very clever about forcing Indigenous people onto reservations, in the sense that when it's not starvation, they're basically like, look what's happening in the US. Look at these Indian wars. Look at the massacres that are happening there. You don't want that to happen. Why don't you just go on the reserve? So it's not like there's always this policy that Canada has of being a little bit better than the US that totally depends on everything going on in the US. So it's always like a good cop, bad cop kind of situation. Canada can't do what it does or get away with what it gets away with unless the US is there doing the bad cop work. So you have to understand it as part of a system. It's the same with, like analogous to the Republicans and Democrats in the US, right? It's like Canada and the US. It's like the Democrats love that the Republicans are so right wing so that they can say, well, at least we're not them. And Canada has that with the US. At least we're not. However bad it is, whatever they're doing in Canada, they can always say, So in Alberta, for example, has a Sexual Sterilization Act. It's law, 1928 to 1972, under which they sterilized 2,800 Indigenous women. And this whole system, there's a book, there's some good kind of anti-colonial literature from the 1970s in Canada. There's a book called The Genocide Machine in Canada. And what they talk about specifically is like Canada's basically this mining project. It's a colonization project. So we have the fur trade, we have the buffalo, we have all of these things. But then ultimately today, the project is mining. And Canada there's all these mines in Canada for all kinds of minerals and oil. Some of the dirtiest oil in the world comes from Alberta, right? The oil sands. And there's mining. This mining project is basically like you go to Indigenous land,
and then we have this like fake culture just slapped on top of it. And that's the fucked up thing, is that people buy into it. Like, imagine being one of these people that you basically live, like as Justin Trudeau said, Canada's a country, you know, just kind of misspoke. Imagine buying it. Imagine being a Canadian nationalist and actually buying this idea that we have this like culture. It's just sad. It's just a sad state of affairs. You've been hoodwinked by like the lowest effort propaganda campaign in human history to convince people that we have some kind of shared civilization or shared culture. Like, what are you doing? People that buy into you're getting your ideas about this country from literally a beer commercial. You've had your cultural identity dictated to you by a beer corporation. Like, what is wrong with you? You really have to do better, you know? You have to do better.
Deprive people of their livelihoods because they depend on water and fishing and hunting and all of these things that depend on an intact ecosystem. You destroy all of that. And then you put them on welfare, basically. You say, okay, well, we'll keep you alive through emergency relief, welfare. And then you kind of complain, like, why do we have to put these people up? Why do we have to, you know, it becomes this resentment. Like, they have special treatment, they have special rights but it's like you just deprived them of their livelihoods, right? This is the model of mining that Canada then exports to the world. So Canada is the world's mining superpower. Almost half of the world's publicly listed mining and mineral exploration companies are from Canada. And this is actually the role that they play on the G7, is that they're the mining company to the mining project to the world.
So this is why Canada, like, actually, like, its economy matters.
Yeah. And freedom in Canada is understood as free access to mining. And there's like a forest defenders NGO that's basically made a map. This is some time ago too. This is years ago, where they kind of mapped out all of the territory that's been kind of staked and claimed by mining companies, and that's in red. So if you look at this map that you're showing here, a really huge chunk of Canadian land, most, you know, I don't know if it's majority, but it's easily 20 or more % of the entire immense national territory is actually planned. Some mining company plans to have a mine there. And obviously, if this happens, right, this is a map for basically like ecological destruction of unbelievable scale. So
yeah, for those who are listening, it's like basically like we're showing a map of Canada, and like all the red is the various like mines.
And then do
like
Africa.
No, they're not
America.
the mines. They're the stake. Like the mining. Some mining company has said we want to mine here one day.
Okay, yeah. Like they've like decided this area belongs to us, that we can go mine it when we want.
Yeah,
and it's like split up by. There's a lot of its mineral claims. Like the red part is all the mineral claims, but it's a lot of Canada basically. Like for those who can't see it, it's like they've like claimed all the territory to mine.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you think of the legal basis for,
I feel like Canada is closer to Israel than USA in a lot of ways. Just no social fabric, bereft of any authentic culture, just an incoherent settler project. And that's why we support Israel so much. And people wonder why. Why does Canada support Israel? And they reach into these like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about being controlled by the Jews or whatever it is. But it's like, it has nothing to do with that. We literally just identify them because we're both these fucking genocidal settler colonies. And Israel is in the process of carrying out that genocidal settler project. And we basically completed our genocide, decades ago or centuries ago. And that's why we get along. It's not this big, you don't have to go into these conspiracy theories to wonder why. It's like we're just the exact same kind of society, the exact same kind of fake culture grafted onto this brutal, violent project that's rooted in exploitation and theft and ethnic cleansing. That's why.
For Canada, or the basis for Canada, because this map also contains like indigenous treaties. So Canada is, the land on which Canada exists is all indigenous land, right? And there's been a treaty process which involved a fair amount of deception and swindling, and Canada not fulfilling its obligations under the treaties to get this land from Indigenous people. But
And yeah, Larry, this is a good point as well. Seeing the genocidal project is further along here, I think we must be careful not to feed the false narrative that total native liberation is the only path to socialism here, for sure. And I don't want to say that we've completed it, because I agree with that, and we still need to confront that if you live here as kind of the primary contradiction. And looking at this map here of the Aboriginal communities and these land claims, like that's, you understand exactly, and the idea of crown land. And you have to understand, like, that's what land back is about. And that's why we as socialists in the settler colony need to still fight for and promote the idea of giving the land back. It's not to kick out whoever from fucking Joe from Scarborough and make him go back to Ireland or whatever it is. Even though I think that would be funny if that's it is what ended up happening. But it's really about giving these crown lands back and restoring the sovereignty of these indigenous nations, which are still in existence. Yeah, Canada still is very much in process, just further along in the settling of the land and this process of ethnic cleansing. That means the settlers have no right to any actual land or how it's used. I think that's why it's communist duties to unite behind the leadership of the oppressed, especially natives in that fight. Yeah, exactly. Both at home and abroad, in other cultures and communities that are fighting back against colonization.
For the most part, the Canada's claim to this land is pretty shaky. And Canada,
it's all fraud. All the treaties are all based on fraud
from Indigenous nations. Before
and people say like we can't become a republic because then it just we'd have to undo all those treaties. And it's like, yeah, we should. That's not only should we try to become a republic, but we should undo all those treaties, and we should give all that crown, all these fraudulent treaties that we signed in this duplicitous process of like theft and lies. Yeah, which we should throw all these treaties in the fucking garbage.
Do any of these projects. So that's part of why this map is so interesting, is because you, on the one hand, Canada says, well, we're free to mine everywhere. And on the other hand, Canada is in this kind of shaky legal situation where all the land in Canada is actually Indigenous land. And there's no solid legal basis other than the treaties for Canada to even have access to this land in the first place. And the treaties, of course, Canada is not fulfilling. So maybe they have to give it all back. So it's just this, it's the way that Canada exists as this mining project and doesn't have a solid claim to the territory on which it exists. And it's just a very interesting legal situation. And then, so if the whole point of colonization and settler colonialism in the first place is to get rid of the native population, then there's the part of filling the land up with the non-native population, with the settler population. And the various patterns of immigration to Canada are designed to serve the needs of the British Empire and ultimately to kind of win the demographic war with First Nations. So again, going back to the beginning of the 20th century, the Canadian government created this open door immigration for white people, basically for white people. And Clifford Sifton, who was the Minister of the Interior from 1896 to 1905, he said basically, we're looking for a quality immigrant. That's something quite different from what the average person has in mind. He says, I think a stalwart peasant in a sheepskin coat, born on the soil, whose forefathers have been farmers for 10 generations with a stout wife and a half dozen children, is good quality. A trades union artisan who will not work more than 8 hours a day and will not work that long if he can help it, will not work on a farm at all, and has to be fed by the public when his work is slack, is in my judgment quantity and very bad.
There's our Ukrainian immigration policy since the post-war period.
So that's
and
when
bring
they
over
start
those trade unionists. In fact, we got to bring over a bunch of fascists and
Irish, Scottish,
former SS guys so they can act as muscle for capital against the labor movement, which was being led by Ukrainians at that time.
There's a whole Irish thing that happens after the famine in 1840s. So a lot of Irish come then, but then there's a thing that happens with Chinese immigrants where Chinese come starting in the 1850s and even earlier to Western Canada, BC, and then Canada imposes various head taxes and bans, but they also want to take advantage of colonizing China along with the British. And so, one of the Chinese consul to Canada says, Europeans
Crying to Radiohead. This is Justin Poder, who's a friend of the stream, talking with Rania Kalik, who's also a friend of the stream.
Relations with China, but enforce unjust and equal restrictions on Chinese merchants and laborers. So that was, about 100 plus years ago, and there were outright anti-Asian riots in Vancouver in 1907.
There's the video too. Please subscribe to Breakthrough News.
Smash all their windows and all that stuff. So Canada has a long history of anti-Chinese discrimination,
and we're back at it again, baby.
Not absent from the current political discourse in Canada.
We're back at it again.
And that leads us to a whole other discussion of the way that Canada recruits immigrants with particular, I guess, political positions from different parts of the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's a nice overview of the sort of Canadian, I guess, the Canadian settler colonial history. And then that kind of feeds into what you're talking about with the different kinds of immigrants. I mean, one thing that Canada also has is these kinds of right-wing diasporas.
Yeah.
And there's a few examples of this that I know that you want to touch on. So I'll just hand it over to you there. Yeah. Can you walk us through who some of those diasporas are and the role they kind of
listen to the immigrants.
Sort of
listen to the Ukrainians.
This or that. Yeah.
A few stories, right? So of course, because Hong Kong was an outright British colony until very recently. I think it was 1989 or something. It was like 100-year lease that the British, when they took Hong Kong, were thinking was never gonna expire, and then China had the revolution in 1949, and then they just waited until it expired, and then they were like, well, it's expired, we won't be giving you another lease for Hong Kong, right? So but when that happened, a lot of Chinese people from Hong Kong who were anti-Chinese revolution came to Canada, because of course it's a British colony. It's the same system as Hong Kong was, right? So that's one, and so a lot of the Chinese community in Canada from that time and since is against the Chinese government, which is great, because Canada then can say look, we have Chinese people and they hate the Chinese government, which happens to be Canada's official position as well.
Right.
In 2002, 2003, I think, there was a huge, in Venezuela, they attempted to overthrow the government in a coup in 2002. Chavez, Hugo
it's called
Chavez,
democracy.
Was kidnapped.
It's called
for 2
loving
days.
Democracy too much.
And then they were forced to free him and let him out, and he resumed his presidency. But they tried to create a national strike. So the oil company executives.
Sorry, I didn't hear a bloop.
Went on strike in 2003.
I don't know what that is.
And they tried to bring the oil industry, which is Venezuela's key strategic industry, to its knees and force a regime change that way. And when Chavez responded by basically firing all the managers and engineers and keeping the industry going that way, well, a lot of those diehard anti-Chavez people with those skills to work in petroleum mining came to Canada, and they went to work.
Look at that.
Yeah, and they went to work in Alberta. So then again, you have, a group of Venezuelans who are Venezuelan. They're as Venezuelan as anybody, just like the people from Hong Kong, or as Chinese as anybody, and they happen to hate the government that's in power. So it's this beautiful, from Canada's perspective, it's like you have this great identity. You can be very positive towards people with that identity, because they're taking that political position that is also coincides with what the U.S. and the Canadian state wants to hear. You have, of course, the Jewish community in Canada, and the Jewish community in Canada, it's amazing because the Jewish community organizations are all pro-Israel, and so the official Jewish community, of course, is pro-Israel, and then any Jewish person, of which there are many who are not pro-Israel, is sort of like, well, you're not really part of the community then, right? Like it's this
that's how much we love listening to what the Jewish people are saying.
To be a Jewish Canadian or a Venezuelan Canadian or a Chinese Canadian is also to be to identify with the politics of the country in a way that Canada also
does.
Does. That's the word.
And we're seeing, like, as we see with our Chinese diaspora right now, there's like Justin's pointing out, there's many people in the Chinese diaspora in Canada. There's a reactionary element that are against China because of being from Hong Kong or Tibet or any of these other places prior to the revolution where their family left. And as we're seeing in our media now, like with this whole CSIS narrative that's been promoted, whenever any of these people from the Chinese diaspora that do actually like China, that appreciate what the Chinese government does, that wants to support their home country, that wants to like acknowledge that they've accomplished these amazing things in terms of the development, or what, that wants to maybe tone down slightly this constant antagonism that we're sending in China's direction. Whenever a Chinese person actually speaks up and articulates this kind of idea, we say, you've been like brainwashed, you're being controlled, there's no way you could actually just naturally hold that position. You must be getting paid by the CPC in order to articulate these things or to have this viewpoint. There's no way that you could actually just have pride in your country and not want to have this kind of constant antagonism, and maybe want to contribute to toning down this kind of relentless climate of antagonism that we've set up, which like is literally dangerous for people who are part of the Chinese diaspora or any part of the Asian diaspora at all, because as the reactionaries that buy into these narratives don't exactly discriminate. They don't ask for a fucking passport when they choose to be racist towards Asian people. But when any of these folks say, like, maybe can we tone this down? Maybe can we ask a few critical questions about these genocide allegations? Or maybe can we say positive things about China? We say, no, how dare you? You're being brainwashed. You've been brainwashed by the CPC. You're being paid. You're a paid agent. We literally have set up this situation where it's just not legitimate. And it's not just Chinese people, like he's pointing out. If you're Jewish and you speak out against Israel, we've created this situation where it's just like it's just not legitimate. Your viewpoint is just immediately discarded. The only viewpoint that we want to hear about is the explicitly like China bad anti-PRC viewpoint or the pro-Israel viewpoint. We don't want to hear from anyone from these communities that believe differently or think differently, like Justin's pointing out, of which there are very many, which is very racist in and of itself.
So those are all examples, and then there are some diasporas in Canada that are just like invisible. So there's a big Palestinian community actually in the city where I grew up, which is like a suburb of Toronto called Mississauga, and there's many Palestinians there, and there's even a thing called Palestine House there, which is almost like an unofficial consulate, right? And the Palestinian Canadian community is not even, you don't even really hear that phrase. That's not
Yeah.
a phrase. You might
Yeah.
hear about an Arab Canadian community. You might hear about a Muslim Canadian community, but you won't hear the Palestinian Canadian community. There are people who try to put that out there, but you essentially won't hear it. There's even we even have a minister in the cabinet who's Palestinian Canadian, but he never talks about himself that way. Interesting character, but I won't. I'll leave it at that. Canadians will know. Canadians will know.
This is like too inter-Canadian baseball here.
Then there's Ukraine, and Ukraine is pretty special
Mm-hmm.
because our deputy prime minister is Chrystia Freeland, whose grandfather ran like a Nazi newspaper. And this is like, there's an interview from before when Chrystia Freeland was an academic.
I've got some sub-breaking news queued up to look at after this King window.
Who's also a Canadian politician and writer. He's a pro-empire. He wrote a book. He writes books about like why the empire is a good thing, why the U.S. empire is a good thing. He was at Harvard for a while, and he ran for prime minister. He didn't do very well. He didn't electorally, he didn't succeed. But there's an interview, he does an interview with Chrystia Freeland where he says it is common, he's quoting Chrystia. He says
Russian propaganda.
It is
very
common,
sad.
Chrystia Freeland says, for Canadian Ukrainians to think of themselves as the true Ukrainians, the ones who kept the faith, while among the actual Ukrainians, the compulsion and fatalism of the communist system was working its way into their
The Soviet
bones.
Ukrainians don't count as being Ukrainian.
Canadians return home
in the
expecting
exact same
nationalist and religious people, and find instead phlegmatic, ironic, sober, and fatalistic Soviet souls. Independence requires a new human type, but, she says, with an equal measure of affection.
If you're Ukrainian and you espouse that kind of viewpoint, the pro-Soviet, anti-nationalist viewpoint, you don't count.
That's the whole story.
You don't count. You're not part of the community, the diaspora.
Immigrants from different countries, right? It's like,
I mean, we should also
you see the same kind of phenomenon, like with the Chinese diaspora, with the Jewish diaspora, and with the Ukrainian diaspora.
And Chrystia Freeland, without mentioning her father, was literally like a Nazi, or her grandfather, was literally like a Nazi propagandist.
Like a leader. Like he wasn't he wasn't like a small fish. He was a big fish.
Yeah.
And the Canadian that's like, you know, the Canadian prime minister at the time.
A new human type. Yeah, kind of fucking ominous a little bit.
So like the Hitler thing, in fact, there's a story, you know, before, speaking of the Canadian pro-Israel lobby, a lot of them before this current cycle of Ukraine-Russia conflict, which I would say is like 2014 on, right? A lot of them were very upset about the Ukrainian Nazi immigrants. So there were like 2,000 Ukrainian Nazis who came right after World War II to Canada, and one of the things that one of the pro-Israel kind of people in Canada, Irving Abella, I guess he was involved in tracking them, and he said one way of getting into post-war Canada was by showing your SS tattoo, your Nazi tattoo, to prove you're an anti-communist. So like anti-communism is a criteria for getting into Canada. Whether you're a Nazi or not is, you know, pretty irrelevant.
Yeah.
So basically there's like, you know, the settler colonialism of getting all the white people, but now there's also like an ingathering of every right-wing diaspora in the world, and they can come to Canada and they can
That's
be
our
the
beautiful
representatives
multiculturalism
of their countries in Canada. So the kind of hyphenated Canadian is like also takes a political stand as well. So.
I think that's pretty much the end of that discussion. The rest of that is available for Breakthrough News supporters, and I really do encourage everyone to support Breakthrough News because it's really a fantastic outlet. I encourage people to support them, but you know who else you should support is me, Rob Rousseau, and TRRS. I do have to go pretty soon. Again, I gotta go pick up my kid relatively soon. It's his last day, so I really don't want to be late picking him up from his like last day of school, right at the summer vacation starting. But folks, one final time before I have to go, please, if you can, support TRRS. If you enjoy this Twitch stream, if you like having this kind of commentary on twitch.tv, if you want to support the community, if you want to make sure you keep this show on the air, please, if you can, subscribe to TRRS or gift subs. Every little bit helps. And not only do you support me in the work that I do, not only do you support the community, you also get access to some of the very best tiny little images. You get some of the very best tiny images around. There's a whole lot of different channels on Twitch offering a whole lot of different tiny images. But the tiny images you get at this channel are the best of the best. Then you can only get them here. Only the very best tiny images available right here at TRRS. Available for the low, low price of $5. For a measly $5 per month. Not only do you get 5 streams a week, not only do you support the work that I do, you join a wonderful, dynamic, life-changing community. You also get a bunch of tiny little images. And that to me is a win-win-win. That's a great deal. So if you can, folks, please subscribe. Again, I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure yet. They're very valuable, not like NFTs. Well, you can actually use these tiny images in Twitch chats, and you can actually use them that way. It's not completely worthless like an NFT. So if you can, folks, subscribe to TRS. We need to get it would be very nice to get the little number to go up just ever so slightly more. Just ever so slightly more. You can do things like this. Slib to grog. Jeez, this is really getting out of hand here. Really getting out of hand. And I know the sub goal might be a lofty goal considering it's maybe a little bit of a shorter stream today. But just 2 really generous chatters could not only get to the sub goal, but also could trigger the very cool and highly fun and wonderful 10 gift sub animation featuring friend of the stream VJ Prashad. I'm simply saying, do I have to sway more? Is that what people are telling me? Is that what I need to do? I've tried to have this important analysis and discourse, but you need me to humiliate myself? Is that what we have to do? Can't we just skip that part? Can't we skip the whole humiliation part and just get to the end? Can we get a swaying tiny image? You actually can, yes. You can. You can get a swaying tiny image. I have not licked an egg either today. No, I didn't. No, I did not. Shut. Maybe just maybe one little. I'm losing energy. I'm losing steam, and I don't even know. I don't even know if it's gonna pay off. I will do one little bout of swaying, okay? And that's all I have. That's all I have for you. And hopefully we can get a few more slubs. But here's a good one. Great song. Sorry, it starts off with a bang. So do you have any other takers? Any other takers? Is this doing anything for you? So far, nothing. So far, nothing. This swaying is bringing me nothing.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Marty, for gifting a sub to Clueless on VHS. Thank you, Marty. Anyone else? Does anyone else out there, even just in like a pity way, does anyone want to just like look at me and be like, okay, I can't allow this to go on without just something?
Wow, okay, Rob? Seriously, wow.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh my.
You can count on me.
my.
You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh my goodness. Worldly Bong. Worldly Bong. Thank you so much for the extremely kind and generous 10 gifted subs. Holy Lord, I'm just blown away right now by the generosity. First 10 gifted subs in the channel rockets right up to the very elite tier of the Friendship Triangle system. Worldly Bond, thank you so much. That's so kind of you, and I really appreciate the support. And thank you, Anonymous Gifter, for the gifted sub. Very much appreciate you, Anon, whoever you are. And Ben and PS, thank you for the gifted sub as well.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
A well-traveled bond. Just when we were losing faith, it's reignited like never before. That's the amazing thing about this community. And thank you, Matt, for the gifted sub to Marcus for left flank. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Worldly Bond, hell yeah. The alert's pretty cool too, right? The alert's pretty cool. I think, Cradbabes, you've made enough contribution in terms of like chatting to at least get into the chaos zone. I think you're firmly in the chaos zone, Cradbabes. Firmly in the chaos zone. What a fucking great song. It's a great song. Well, we just got a few more minutes, folks. And now the sub goal is in sight. Now it's in reach. The sub goal is in reach. Just a few generous chatters could heroically drag TRRS across the sub goal finish line today. In theory. I'm just saying it's a possibility, you know? I'm just saying that it's a possibility. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't at least point that out, that it's a possibility. Is it a crime? Is it a crime to talk about things that may or may not happen? I don't think so. At least one timeline, we're hitting the sub goal, let's make it this one. And yeah, there's some timeline out there where Sausage Finger Rob is not hitting it, and maybe we can really show up that guy. Fuck Sausage Finger Rob dimension. I don't want that dimension to succeed. We can be better than that. Sausage Finger Rob is swaying to the music with his gross sausage fingers flopping around. Extremely high falsetto. You're not the only one, 'cause seeing is believing. That was not high enough. It's even higher. A valiant effort. Thank you, folks. Oh, you know, here, we can do a sub update. Before we go here. You know, before the end of the stream today, folks, I know many of you have been deeply invested in this story of the submarine and the search for potential survivors. The submarine. Well, unfortunately, I do have an update on that explosive story, or it's the implosive story, you might say.
Well, in a way, it's pH was very close to all of us, and this solution was the simplest solution that we heard.
Speaking of subs,
they had lost contact, and someone else said that someone else heard an implosion right around the same time, which meant the sub was probably right over Titanic, and any debris would have fallen down onto the Titanic debris field. Well, in a way, it's
which is funny because it's like, oh yeah, we heard this implosion sound. Like, you couldn't have mentioned that. You couldn't have mentioned that a couple of days ago. We've gone 3 days here. 3 days we've been breathlessly wondering about this story. And it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we heard like a big implosion sound, like right around the time that we lost contact with it.
And you're getting some news. You're hearing some news.
Yeah, I'm. There's a WhatsApp group between ourselves and the Explorers Club that we've all been connected to as soon as this happened, and our president is directly connected to the ships that are out there, and the message that they're telling me, if you're talking about debris, it was a landing frame and a rear cover from the submersible. So again, this is a very unconventional submarine. That rear cover is that pointy end of it.
Yeah.
And the landing frame is this little frame that it seems to sit on, and that's how it gets docked into the landing bit.
Right.
So that confirms it's the submersible.
Rescue expert, friends of two of those on board. And
Most likely scenario is that the hull of the submersible imploded due to the brittle carbon fiber material, killing all 5 passengers within milliseconds, which the CEO of this company rigorously fought for and pushed back on any efforts to make it more safe or to point out that they were like not at all ready to absorb the amount of water pressure that is involved in submersing to these depths. So I guess maybe in retrospect, that was not the best idea. I don't know. In retrospect, maybe that was just not the best.
The United States Coast Guard now says it has discovered a debris field near the search area for a missing submersible near Titanic's wreckage.
Let's see some crying Robs in the chat,
the Coast Guard
please.
says teams are examining that field right now to see if it is.
The guy in our chat knew a couple of the victims. He said they knew their demise was inevitable once they went woke. Exactly. We all know that wokeness is what's behind here.
Crew members. We're expecting a news
What's
conference
behind this
from the
tragedy?
Coast Guard at 3 o'clock this afternoon. WBZ's Nick Giovanni shows us how some newly arrived technology is helping out in the search effort.
In a race against time, an active search for the missing submersible Titan continued Thursday morning with a pair of ROVs, or remotely operated underwater vehicles, deployed from French and Canadian vessels.
You know, one really funny thing about that crying Rob emote is that I was doing that crying face because of that cop that was giving that like tearful sign-off speech because he was losing his job because he refused to get the vax, and I was doing that crying face like listening to his like big heroic speech that he had planned out to give over the radio or whatever, and then the cop ended up dying of COVID. The same guy who was like, I'm losing my job because I'm unclean, and just like giving this big emotional speech, and then he died of COVID. Is this not a genuinely sad story? I mean, it's kind of sad for the 19-year-old kid that was in there. You know, I think it's kind of like this thing was obviously a death trap. It's a horrible way to go. No question of that. But it seems like there was a few crucial mistakes made along the ways by a number of the people involved with this, both the company that makes this quote-unquote submarine and the very wealthy people that decided to go on this thing, this extremely dangerous and much too thin carbon fiber tube, basically, which is being piloted by this 90s Logitech controller. You know, I just think general common sense when you find yourself in that situation is like, this is unsafe, you know? Me not knowing anything about submersibles or the ocean or science or any of that stuff, I feel like if I were to go up to that vehicle, tube, whatever you want to call it, I would be like, you know what, this doesn't seem safe to me. I'm going to go ahead and not go in there. And, you know, they did. So, I don't know. I simply just would not have gone in the first place.
Bound for the seafloor.
It sends out a ping of sound that bounces off all of the things around it, and it comes back, so you can kind of generally see the shapes of things.
Search crews trying to zero in on the underwater noises picked up by sonar buoys over the last 2 days, thought to be periodic, possibly rhythmic banging sounds. while estimates suggested the Titan, with 5 people on board, was set to run out of oxygen this morning.
This estimate of 96 hours is coming from an assumption of a average consumption rate. There's not very
Just
many
to distract from the disastrous counteroffensive.
Right?
It is funny. Like I think you're joking, Matt, but it is funny how the whole counteroffensive thing just hasn't been talked about in the media, right? They're just like, we'd prefer if you just didn't pay any attention to that at all. Whereas I'm sure if it was going well, we would be hearing all about it. But they're like, there's no counteroffensive. What are you talking about? What's going on with that?
As more resources move toward the site where the submersible lost contact on its way down to the Titanic Sunday, the search area on the surface
We simply
doubled in size
use the
yesterday
computer to mark up
roughly
the size of the
20,000
account.
square miles.
Wonder why the 14,000 people who have drowned in the Mediterranean trying to reach refuge in Europe is not as hyped as 3 dumbass billionaires in a submarine? Thinking face.
Katie Croft Bell
Thank
is
you,
the president
Dimitri.
and founder of the Ocean Discovery League.
Thank you,
who's
Dimitri,
been
for the
working
200
with
friend coin.
ROVs
It would
for
be
more than
nice
20
maybe if we
years.
thought about
She
that
says
kind of stuff a little bit
navigating the
more.
seafloor
Maybe our
is
media was
slow
interested in
operation.
covering
The
that
hope
story.
is the submersible
You know, the
shape
hundreds
stand
of
out to
migrants that
searchers.
drown every
do
year as
see
a
it in the
direct
sonar
result of our
relatively
own
quickly,
imperialist
that'll
policies and our
enhance,
own
I
result
think,
of our
probably a sort of
climate
unique shape
policies and
compared to a lot
energy
of the other
policies,
debris and natural geological features that
which
are,
we're
that are in that
directly
area.
responsible for.
So hopefully,
You know, that
they're
would be
able to
kind of good,
get,
I think.
close enough to it that they'll be
If
able
we
to
talked
find
about
it
that
relatively quickly.
even
This is
1/10
a
as
very
much.
slow walk around the seafloor. This is not a blistering pace. So that's the difficulty of it.
Reporting from Boston, Nick Giovanni, WBZ News.
The U.S. Navy is sending a deep ocean.
Thanks, folks. You know, I'm just pointing out that there is like another minute that some brave hero could come along and get the stream to the sub goal today. But I'm just saying that. Anyways, thank you for hanging out today, folks. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for the conversation. This was a fun one. I don't know what's going on tomorrow yet. I might not be here tomorrow. I might be tomorrow in the evening. I might just take the day off. I don't know. Not really sure yet. Gotta figure it out. But Dan just ended. Okay.
Think of in recent memory where some fucking cosmic justice has been delivered to someone for anything. Really, we live in the universe where people get rewarded for being the biggest pieces of shit possible.
Good luck on the Raps getting a good guy in the draft. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty disappointed with where they ended up in the draft, but overall they've been pretty good at nabbing guys later in the draft, so hopefully they'll get someone good. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow, all right? Or, I don't know. I just got finished saying that I don't know, so maybe I won't. Maybe I will and maybe I won't. We got Capital Volume 1 Book Club starting tonight in the Discord server. And if you're not in that Discord server, please join. Please join the Discord server. Give my regards to our friend David Tovarish. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. Thanks for supporting me and the work I do on here. I love you all. I'll see you soon. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe on the weekend. Maybe we'll have some late night gaming. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I only host the show. Why would I know anything about when it's going to be on? I don't know. Take care.